So hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for attending our webinar today on summer research opportunities. We're really excited to share a bunch of information, tips, resources, tricks to help you on your research journey. So before we sort of introduce ourselves and we officially get started, we're going to acknowledge the land that we're on, and we're going to set some webinar guidelines. So there has been a hospital on this land since 1829. And for thousands of years, this land has been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We also want to acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We remember and honor the legacy of the peoples who have been here before us, and all who are working to make the promise of truth and reconciliation real. I would like to invite you at this time to take a moment to reflect on the land that you are on and what it means to you. And if you want to know a little bit more about the land that you're on, because we're probably all coming from different places right now, you can refer to the QR code here to find some resources. So thank you very much. So before we begin officially, we want to share a few webinar guidelines. So first of all, we want to let you know that after today's session, we're going to share the recording and the presentation slides with everybody. So you're going to have access to all the information and all the resources that we've linked in the presentation. We also want to remind you to please remain muted and to keep your video off. And if you have any questions throughout the presentation, we ask you to put them on the Slido. So you can access the Slido here through the QR code, or I think Amanda's going to put the link to the Slido in the chat. So what we're going to do through this presentation is we're going to go through everything. We're going to give you lots of information and tips. And then at the end, we're going to have some time to answer all your questions. So just so you know too, if you can't stay all the way to the end for the questions, don't worry. We will send a recording with everything after, so you'll have access to everything. And finally, we just want to remind you to please be considerate of other people. This is a shared virtual space, and we want this to be a safe space for everybody here. So please keep in mind that you're expected to follow the ORT Code of Conduct.
Great. So now we just want to tell you a little bit about ourselves so you can understand where we're coming from when we're giving you these tips. So my name is Amanda, and I am the lead, the ORT, or the Office of Research Trainees, which is the main training center at the University Health Network. I did my PhD in microbiology at the University of Toronto, and I am a first-generation scientist. So I have nobody in my family that went to university or went into science at all. So I had to navigate all my research experiences by myself. And it was a tricky process. So this is kind of why I'm motivated to plan a session like this and share tips to make it easier for all of you.
All right, so my name is Lauren Delvell, and I work with Amanda in the Office of Research Trainees at UHN. I have a PhD. I guess I did it sort of in a mix of things. I worked with fruit flies, and I was a little bit of cell biology, a little bit of developmental biology, very cool. Before my PhD, I actually had very little research experience. So I actually didn't do research until I was in the fourth year of my undergrad, and then I went straight into sort of a full-fledged program. So people have lots of different paths, and there's lots of different entry points. And so one of the things we want to do today is provide you with some of those different entry points.
Great. So we have a lot to cover this session that we're really excited about. So just want to give you a brief overview of some of the things that we'll be talking about. We'll be telling you why you should participate in summer research and the benefits that it has, why of all the places you should pick to do your research at the University Health Network, or UHN. We'll tell you a little bit about our summer program, and we'll give you lots and lots of tips for how to go through the application process. So how to start, how to get a research supervisor, how to contact scientists directly, and lots more. So again, we want you to know that we think that every single person has a role in research if they want to, no matter what kind of background you come from, or what kind of experience you already have. So we really just want to provide you with everything you need to know so that you can find your place in research.
All right, so we're going to start, excuse me, a little bit about, like why you should want to, or why you could be interested and what you could gain from summer research. So participating in a research program has lots of benefits and opportunities. It gives you a chance to actually try out scientific research and determine if you actually like it. Often we don't know if we like things until we're actually in the middle of doing them. So it's a great opportunity for that. You're able to gain valuable experience that can help you with your graduate school or your professional school applications. You can build and develop a whole bunch of skills. So you'll be able to build your research and your communication skills and your scientific knowledge, but you'll also be able to build lots of other personal skills, your self-confidence, your ability to advocate for yourself, your interpersonal skills, and a lot more. You'll be able to explore potential careers in research and healthcare and actually make connections in those fields and start to build your network with research professionals. And of course, research is extremely fun, it's extremely fulfilling, and so it is a really great summer job to have. So these are just some of the reasons why you might want to participate in a summer research program. And so just before we talk about UHN, I want you to think about your own goals and what you hope to gain from the experience. And that will also, I think, help in sort of your application process. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit now about UHN. So why UHN? So today we're going to focus specifically on summer research programs at UHN, and we wanted to tell you a little bit about it. So the University Health Network is huge. It's made up of 4 hospitals, an education center, and 7 different research institutes. And each, at those research institutes, there are over 1,100 principal investigators or scientists who are all running unique labs and unique research programs. And, that's leading to lots of publications and lots of research funding and things like that. So research at UHN is extremely diverse. There is research covering basic science to computational science to translation and clinical research. And like I mentioned, there's a bunch of different research institutes. So there's 7 different research institutes, which are listed here. And we're going to share a little bit more information about these different institutes a little bit later in the presentation so that you can get a sense of the research and the types of things that are happening in each one.
Okay, so now that you know a little bit more about UHN, we're going to talk to you specifically about the summer program at UHN, what it involves, who can take part, and lots more. So UHN has a newly developed program called the STAR, or Summer Training and Research Program, which is an umbrella program that includes all UHN summer students, no matter which department or scientist you're working with, or no matter which location. Please check out the website. We've linked it here. You'll get it in our follow-up email as well. But what we've tried to do is build a database of all information that you would need to know about doing summer research at UHN. And we're going to keep updating it as we find new information. So definitely check it out at various points in time. Now, the UHN STAR program has 3 components. As part of the program, you will do a summer of research under the supervision of a UHN scientist. And in the next section of the talk, we'll provide all the information on how you can set that up and get those research positions. Once you have a scientist and you're here for the summer, we will also provide educational sessions so that you can build your research and professional skills. We had a great time hosting these sessions last year. We covered all kinds of topics that we thought would be interesting to you, including career options for science grads, where we tried to help you explore what your career options could be. We did grad school panels to learn more about everything having to do with grad school. We learned about LinkedIn, resumes, how to present your research, and much more. And we're looking to expand the programming this year even more. At the end of the summer, we also host a research day where you can share everything that you learned during this summer, present your research, and win prizes. Now, students that complete all 3 parts of the program will get a certificate of completion. So next is the eligibility. Who is eligible to have these summer research positions? So as you can see here, we've kind of laid it out, and you can see it's pretty inclusive. Students from all different backgrounds perform research at UHN every summer. So this includes undergraduate students at all stages and experience levels, medical students who are interested in doing research, health professional learners, and this includes a huge range of learners, but we've included some of the examples here. So nurses, occupational therapists, speech pathologists, anybody who's interested in doing research in a healthcare setting to add to their professional training. We also have graduate students that do summer research projects, and this can be if you have a work placement as part of your degree. And sometimes there are also high school students that can do summer research, although they have to be over 16. And for all of the programs and resources related to high school opportunities, please check out the UHN STEM Pathways website, which I've linked to here. Now, it is really important to remember that while anyone can perform summer research at UHN, not all positions are going to be open to everyone. And so every lab program or position may have their own eligibility criteria and different requirements for what they're looking for. That also means to not get discouraged if one lab turns you down, a different lab might be open to having a student with your background. Okay, so now what to expect during your summer position. So all research positions that are paid must provide compensation that is equivalent to at least minimum wage. So even if in some cases students are given awards for their summer research, so you may win multiple awards or win one award and then your PI may give you another lump sum, it should always equal up to at least minimum wage, and we encourage our PIs to pay more than minimum wage as well. But just keep that in mind as you're calculating how many hours you're gonna work and how many weeks and things like that, that we want to make sure that you're getting paid at least minimum wage. Now we have start dates in terms of work that are very flexible. So this can be set up with you and your PI that you can start whenever is best for the both of you. You can work for 12 weeks or 14 weeks or 10 weeks. It doesn't really matter as long as it's agreed to by you and your supervisor. Now, there are also options for all kinds of different positions. So we have summer research projects that are completely in person. We have ones that are completely virtual, or we have positions that are hybrid. So depending on what you're looking for, please mention that to the supervisors that you're applying to, and they may have options for accommodating those different requests. And lastly, while you're at UHN, we want to make sure that you have an amazing experience. So we will provide you with lots of opportunities to attend scientific seminars, lots of educational opportunities, including the educational sessions that our office provides that I already told you about, and lots more. We'll plan lots of events for you to get to know people at UHN.
All right. So for the rest of the presentation, we're really going to focus on the application process itself, and we're going to start at the very beginning. So you know you want to apply to work in a research lab, but where do you actually start? And we want to recommend that you actually start with your research interests. So to help you learn a little bit about the research possibilities and to identify your specific research interests, we wanted to share a little bit more about the institutes and the diversity of research at UHN. So what we're going to do now is sort of talk through the 7 different institutes and highlight some of the research and the different things that go on at the different institutes. So the first one that we're going to talk about is KITE. And KITE is the research arm of the Toronto Rehabilitation Institute. And KITE stands for Knowledge, Innovation, Talent Everywhere. And their areas of focus include things like rehabilitation, injury prevention, aging, and independent living. And one thing we wanted to highlight is that they have these really amazing science simulation labs, and you can see a picture of 2 of them here. And you can actually tour these labs virtually online. So if you're interested in this, highly recommend taking a look. The second institute we want to talk about is the Krembil Research Institute, and this is the institute at UHN that's associated with Toronto Western Hospital. And at Krembil, there's 3 main areas of research. So they focus on the brain and the spine, they focus on bones and joints, and also the eye. And they also run a podcast, which is called Your Complex Brain. So if you're interested in neuroscience and brain development, I would encourage you to take a look at that. Okay, the MacEwan Stem Cell Institute is the next one on our list. And as the name suggests, their focus is stem cells. And just a fun fact here, in the 1960s, it was actually UHN researchers who first conceptualized and actually discovered stem cells. So at the MacEwan Stem Cell Institute, like I said, they study stem cells and they focus on blood cancers, regeneration, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and also liver disease. Next is the Princess Margaret Cancer Center. And so research at Princess Margaret is focused on cancer biology and imaging, computational biology, genetics, protein structure and function. Princess Margaret Cancer Center is one of the largest research institutes, or one of the larger research institutes at UHN, and it is one of the top 5 cancer research centers in the world. And we've included a QR code here. You can actually find specific scientists that are working in each of these categories at this link. The next institute is TECNA. So the TECNA Institute is all about developing and applying technologies that are going to benefit patients and the healthcare system. So they really focus on using technology to address unmet clinical needs. And their research areas include things like nanotechnologies and communication technologies, guided therapeutics, and lots more. So TIER is another research institute at UHN, and TIER stands for the Institute of Education Research. So at TIER, their aim is to help transform healthcare education through sort of experimentation and asking questions about what's effective in healthcare education and what's not. So it's all about teaching healthcare professionals. So if you're interested in the educational side of healthcare, this might be an institute that's of interest to you. And last but certainly not least is the Toronto General Hospital Research Institute, which is the research institute that's associated with Toronto General Hospital. And scientists here work on a wide range of research topics. So everything from cardiology to diabetes to regenerative medicine. And its researchers are known for discovering lots of different things. They're known for discovering insulin, creating the first cardiac pacemakers, and also developing amazing ways to repair damaged lung tissue. So just to sort of name a few things that are going on here. So now that's kind of an overview to give you a sense of the different research that's going on at the different institutes. So if anything sort of sparked your interest, we encourage you to explore it in more detail. And now that you sort of have a bit more information about the different research at UHN, we just wanted to encourage you to think about what excites you and, think about what research field would you actually choose or want to explore. So to help you, we have some advice from a former UHN summer student named George. So he's going to share some advice on this topic.
Apparently, George is taking a long time to load.
Important tip for finding a research position is to figure out what you're passionate about, what you really like, what keeps you up at night, and then finding someone who does that research, because you need a lot of momentum, talking to people and emailing professors, emailing PIs, trying to get that position. So make sure you like it and don't be shy to show your passion and display it and try to impress them with not just with your knowledge, because we build that along the way, but also with your passion. Make sure you get the message clear that I really want this and I'm willing to learn to study more this topic and do research in that area.
Amazing.
Important tip for.
Thank you, George. So yeah, so really don't, identify your passion and don't be afraid to show it. So we made a list too of a couple other things to consider when you're picking a research area, and a couple other things to ask yourself. So first question, we've talked about this. What are you interested in? What excites you? What are you passionate about? And once you identify those things, then you can use those as your key sort of search words when you're looking for scientists and research opportunities. You also might want to consider what skills or specific experience you have that you can market. So this could be, skills and experience you've gained from courses you've taken, extracurriculars, certain things you've done that have been of interest that then you want to go and pursue further. So to reflect on what you know, and you can use that as a starting point and help market yourself. You might want to also consider what your career goals are. So where do you see yourself in the future, and what kind of positions could help you achieve those goals? And then the final question, which is a big one, and encourage you all to give this some thought. What are your personal priorities, your preferences, or even your limitations? So, for example, we talked about there's opportunity to work virtually or hybrid or in person, and that might influence the type of research you can do. Location, these institutes are spread out in Toronto, and you might want to consider different locations. Hours of availability might influence your choices or which areas you want to go in. Maybe you want to work with living model organisms, maybe you don't. So all of these things could impact the decision and the area that you want to focus on.
Okay, so now that we've talked about some of the different things that you can consider, we'll pop into talking about how do you find a supervisor for your research. And there are three main ways that you can secure research for the summer at UHN. We're going to provide them and also give you lots of tips to help you with the process. So these are the three main ways to find a research position at UHN. The first is to apply directly to a research program. The second is to apply to job postings. And the third one is to contact UHN scientists directly. We'll go through each one separately. So first, there are many summer programs at UHN or at the University of Toronto that help students to connect with UHN scientists. We've created a database of all the different programs that we could find, which is also linked on our website. So these programs either post positions from scientists for you to apply to directly. They may provide lists of PIs that are hiring that you can reach out to, or sometimes there are programs where you apply to the program, and then if chosen, they help you to find and match with a supervisor. If you identify as Black, Indigenous, or Filipino, or identify as having a disability, I highly recommend that you check out the Research Application Support Initiative, or RASI, that is offered through the Community of Support. They provide fantastic program that we partner with every summer. Okay, so you may be kind of confused to why U of T programs would help you to find research positions at UHN, but actually this is because almost all UHN scientists are also affiliated with departments at U of T. So the only thing to note is you'll see in the database that we have U of T programs like the U of T Medical Biophysics program. So the only thing to know about that is that if you apply to that program, you could get matched with a UHN scientist, or you could get matched with a scientist at another great research location in Toronto. So we wanted you to know about the option, but you might not necessarily get matched with somebody at UHN, but you could. Okay, so that's a great resource. And again, it's linked here and we'll send these out after, but you can also find it on the UHN START website. The next option is to apply directly to job postings on the UHN careers page or on our UHN STAR webpage. And I know that many of the people that registered today were looking for jobs beyond just summer research positions. And so this is a great resource for you as well. So you can use the UHN career page. It's a huge database where you can search for different kinds of jobs and different titles, especially if you look under the research category. And new jobs get posted every Thursday. So if you check now, and there probably aren't that many any summer research positions right now, but keep looking every Thursday and you'll be able to see the new jobs that are available. Now, the other place you can look is on our website. There's a section of our website for job postings. So whenever we find a job posting for a summer research position at UHN, we will also post it there just to make it easier for you. So definitely check that out. We'll post them as soon as we find them. Now, the next method is the most common, which is contacting scientists directly. And there's two ways that you can do this, and we'll run through both of them. The first one is building and using your network. Now, of course, when I say this, I might have already scared some of you because you might feel like you don't have a network, and that's totally fine. I'm going to go through some steps of how you can build a network and how you can use it to find a supervisor. The other option is to explore the list of scientists at UHN and then pick ones and cold email them, even if you've never heard of them before or you have no connection with them. And we'll show you how to do that as well. Okay, so there are many different ways to network to find a summer job. Basically, it involves talking to anyone that you find about your interest in research and trying to see what there is available and what people know about. So the first option is to talk to your current or past professors. This is especially effective if you've built a relationship with them by asking questions or participating in your classes, or if you've attended their office hours, or even if you're just doing relatively well in their class. So feel free to reach out to those supervisors and just ask them about research opportunities if they're taking students or if they know anybody else that is. Another great option is to talk to your teaching assistants for your lab courses or tutorial. Likely these TAs work in research labs as graduate students or postdoctoral researchers, and they can tell you more about their research. Also, if they are really impressed with you, they could potentially recommend you to their supervisor, and that could be a good way in. And I know the lab I did my graduate studies in did this all the time. We used to pick our summer students based off of kind of who we were impressed with that we came into contact with through our labs and tutorials. The next option is that you can attend events to try and build opportunities to meet these professors, postdoctoral researchers, or grad students, from the labs that you're interested in. And so I know that this has been really hard with COVID, but as things have started reopening, you can try to attend different things like recruitment fairs, in-person talks, in-person socials, and any kind of opportunity where you can meet more people. And just try to put yourself out there and introduce yourself to these people. And this is actually how I got my first research position when I was at McMaster. I went to a recruitment fair and I spoke to a grad school student, learned about his research, and then he introduced me to his supervisor. And that's how I got in to be able to do my research there. So it's a great strategy. And then the last one is you can build connections in research labs by reaching out to grad students and postdocs in the labs that you're interested in. So often if labs have websites, they usually have a section, or they might have a section where they include the names and sometimes even email addresses of the people on their teams. And as a former grad student myself, I can tell you that I rarely got contacted by students about summer research. So whenever I did, I loved meeting with students, telling them about our lab, about our research. And if I was impressed by those students, again, I would recommend them to my supervisor. So it's a great approach because grad students and postdocs get reached out to a lot less. So now that I've given you some of my advice, I want to share some advice from a UHN scientist. So this is advice from Dr. Jennifer Campbell.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Jennifer Campos. I am a senior scientist and associate director academics at the Kite Research Institute, Toronto Rehab. First of all, I'd like to say you've made a really good choice if you've decided that you're going to apply for a summer research position at UHN. It is a really exciting opportunity that is something that is unique internationally and something that you should take very seriously, but enjoy the process. In terms of tips of how do you get these summer research positions to start with, is make yourself familiar. So this could involve, for example, if a professor or scientist that you're interested in working with is giving a talk somewhere, even if it's an online talk, attend that talk, perhaps ask a question, maybe go up afterwards and introduce yourself. If they have a social media account and that's something that you enjoy as well, then following them on their Twitter or whatever it may be, just creating familiarity. As humans, we're very comfortable with things that are familiar and a little bit less comfortable with things that are unknown or unfamiliar. So increased familiarity, I think, is one of my first tips.
Amazing advice. Oops. Okay, so now that we've given you some suggestions there, we want to show you this is a fantastic resource that UHN Research has for how you can find the scientists to contact. So this is a database where it lists all of the UHN Research scientists, and you can link on, it gives you links so that you can learn more about them, about their research and about their personal lab websites and things like that. What's really great about this database is that there's 3 ways to search for it. So if when Lauren explained the research institutes, there was one that you really connected with, you said, oh, I really want to work with cancer, then you can look specifically at the Princess Margaret Cancer Center, search by institute, and find a list of all the people working in that institute. So that's one really great way to use it. If you know some of the key terms of what fields that you want to work in, like leukemia or computational biology or rehabilitation, then you can search researchers by interest instead. And it's a really cool list of it has very, very specific terms that you can search and try to find out the researchers working in those areas. And lastly, if you know a scientist that you're interested in from one of your classes or because you spoke to one of their grad students, you can use the list where you can search them by name. So this is a great way to learn more about all of the supervisors, find out their contact information, and start reaching out to them.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about how you actually can contact these scientists. So once you've identified a scientist that you're specifically interested in working with, how can you reach out to them? So we're going to share some tips and some tricks, and then also some things to avoid. So we're going to start with some tips. So we recommend that you email the UHN scientist directly that you're interested in working with. So don't call them, don't try to go to their office, don't try to run into them in the elevator. It's best to send them an email. And when you send them an email, there's a couple things that you want to keep in mind. So in your email, you want to include a statement of interest. So you want to talk about why you're interested in the research, why, and I think this is where I guess you can start to talk about your passion, right? You want to convey to them that you understand the research that they're doing, and you want to explain why you're interested. And in your email, you can also include a resume or a CV if you want to, and some people also will attach a copy of their transcript. So those are things that you can include in your email. And a couple of tips for your email. You want to keep it professional and formal, but you can also personalize it. So you really want to make sure that you share a bit about yourself, and you want to make sure that you actually name the scientist directly and direct it specifically to the individual. So keep it formal and professional, but it's okay to be personal and to show a bit about yourself. You want to obviously avoid grammar and spelling mistakes. So we know that details are really important in research. Research is all about the details. And so you want to show that you are paying attention to those details and taking the time to avoid things like grammar and spelling mistakes. So you might want to share your email with someone to get another pair of eyes to make sure that everything's clear. And the other thing is that you want to be clear and succinct. So short emails are effective emails. PIs and scientists, they're going to get lots of emails. So you want to keep it short and sweet and effective. So we have some tips on this topic from a former UHN summer student.
I think what I would say is to start early. Like, a lot of labs accept students on like a rolling basis. So if you have no experience, your best shot is if you start early. So kind of already have an idea of what like summer research programs you're applying to, or what PIs you want to reach out to, and then know their research. Like, a PI doesn't want a student that just sent a generic email saying, oh, I love research, I want to join your lab. Like, kind of know what their research is about and make your email more specific. Like, maybe you read a paper of theirs, or you heard that they researched something that you're interested in. And once you're specific, it shows that you're actually interested in their lab and not just like research in general.
Amazing. Thank you, Titu. Very, very good advice. It's all about being specific. And we also have some advice on this, again, from Dr. Campos.
When you do reach out to a PI, to a scientist, or to a professor, say via email, make sure that you are not submitting a generic email to everyone who you apply to. So the assumption is you're probably going to apply to multiple people in multiple labs to increase your chance of getting a position, and probably because you're interested in a lot of different areas and a lot of different research. But you don't want to just take a template and write it in a very generic way and submit that same email to everybody. No, you want to customize. So first of all, make sure that you address it very specifically to Dr. So-and-so. It's amazing how many people don't do this. They say, dear professor, dear scientist, without specifying a name. And try not to be a little try not to be too informal. Even if you've met them before, it's probably best to always say, for example, Dr. Jennifer Campos, rather than, hey, Jenny. The other thing is that not all research labs are doing the same thing. And so you want to customize your email or your cover letter to ensure that you're really highlighting the very specific aspects of their lab. What is it about their research that gets you so excited? What is it about the tools or techniques that they're using, or the skills that you would achieve in their lab that are unique to their lab? Everybody's going to be a little bit different. And of course, you want to align your skills with what the lab is doing. So if you can customize your letter to really highlight some of the things that you could bring to the table very specifically, and you may not know all the details, but if you just show an attempt to create some alignment, then that's always going to go over very well.
All right, thank you, Dr. Campos. Very good advice. And we can see there's some questions in the chat, and we actually have some people, some PIs sharing their advice, which is great. So what we wanted to do now, which will hopefully address some of the questions that are coming out, is that we identified some frequently asked questions that were related to this topic from the registration. And so we're going to address them now. So one of the frequently asked questions that we saw was, how can I make my application stand out? So we have a couple of tips here for this. So the first thing is to personalize your application materials. So every person we've heard from has highlighted this. You want to address the specific scientist by name who you're emailing, and you want to talk specifically about their research. So the idea of customizing your application materials. You want to research the lab and show a genuine interest in their work. So you want to make it clear that you understand the research that's going on and make it clear why you're interested. You also want to market yourself a little bit. So highlight relevant skills and experience that you have. And this doesn't have to just be, past research experience. You can highlight skills and experience that you have from work, from courses, from extracurriculars, different skills that you think would be important to bring to that research space. Like Dr. Campos mentioned, you can mention or refer to your familiarity with them. So maybe you've taken a class with the scientist, maybe you've attended a lecture, or you've spoken with a member of their lab. You can reference that in your message to them, and show that you're invested and you're connected and you're trying to learn in different ways. And don't be afraid to follow up if they don't answer your initial email. So you can always follow up and reach out again. So another frequently asked question we had was, how do I find a research position with no prior experience? Can first-year undergrads find research positions? And the answer to this is for sure 100%, right? First-year undergrads can find research experience for sure. And some of the advice we have for this is to start early. So we heard this mentioned a few times as well, and we'll talk about how early is early, like we'll get into this in a minute, but start early and market the non-research skills that you have. So you might not have ever worked specifically in a lab before, but you still have a lot of skills and experience that will be useful in a lab setting. So market those non-research skills that you've developed from courses or extracurriculars. Build and use your network. We've talked about this a lot already. And so having a network and becoming familiar with different scientists and graduate students can provide different ways to find research positions if you especially don't have prior experience. You might also want to look for some labs that are new or less visible or popular. Sometimes those labs won't receive as many emails perhaps from other students. So then perhaps your chances of getting a position in that lab might be higher. And sometimes new labs are looking for more than one student. So they might be open to accepting multiple summer students. And so there might be more opportunity in those types of labs. And then really important, try not to be too hard on yourself. If it doesn't happen right away, or if it doesn't happen at all, keep trying. I actually didn't have a research position until I was in my fourth year of my undergrad. And, you know, I still went on and pursued a PhD. So everybody has different entry points, and just don't give up. And I think one thing is to also like ask for advice. If you send out some applications and you don't hear back, reach out to your peers, reach out to anyone and share your application materials. Maybe there's some way that you can improve them. So just keep trying and keep working to improve your process. So another question we saw was, how do I find clinical research positions as a healthcare professional? And so we have a few points of entry to suggest here. So one is to explore research programs in clinical departments. So things like radiation medicine, medical oncology, or hematology. You could also look to identify clinical scientists, or specifically scientists who are doing research related to clinical practice, and that might be a good entry point. You can search for research terms related to your area of clinical practice. And then obviously you can use your network. So if you are a healthcare professional, perhaps through that network, you can find people who are doing clinical research or related in that field. So another question we've, when should we start? So we've talked, this has come up a little bit, but Dr. Campos has some more specific details and advice on this.
Tip is to start early. So you may not realize the timeline. I'm sure you'll learn a little bit more about this. But typically it's the case that as a PI, I have to inform UHN around March of who I would like to bring in as my summer research students. And so for that reason, I have to start considering candidates months in advance because I have to go through, I usually ask somebody to fill out a very brief application form so that I can learn a little bit about them and submit a CV and a cover letter. And then we do interviews. And so all of that takes a little bit of time. So if you make yourself familiar to us and you contact us early, then the chances are you will be on our radar, and it will be easier to connect with you in advance of some of those March deadlines, for example.
Okay, great. So now that we've gone through all the steps of how to make those connections and how to get an offer, we want to talk now about what do you do if you're given an interview, sorry, before the offer stage, but if you're given an interview to figure out if you're a good fit. And so we're going to go through a little bit of the do's and the don'ts. Now, I like to say that this advice is also important for if you're having a coffee chat with a graduate student or a postdoc as well. It doesn't have to just be advice for talking to the scientists themselves. Every interaction that you have on your journey to getting a research position, take it like an interview, because the only way people will recommend you is if you impress them. So as we mentioned, some scientists might request to interview before making their decision. And so our number one tip is to be on time. There's nothing worse than being ready to interview a lot of candidates and a couple show up late and it screws up your whole schedule. It also shows that you're not dedicated to the process and to the position. So definitely make sure that you're on time. And if you can, be a little bit early. Next step is to be prepared. So you really want to familiarize yourself with the research of the lab and prepare questions for them about the lab as well as about the research. And this is really how you can show your understanding of the material, you can show your experience, you can also just show your deep care for the field. So try to read at least one of their papers, try to understand a little bit more, and formulate some good questions about parts that you're the most interested in. And this could really impress them. You can also use these interviews as an opportunity to learn more about the position and see if it's the right place for you. So some common things we suggest that people ask is, who will be your direct supervisor? So you can find out whether it's going to be a particular grad student or postdoc that will be mentoring you, if the PI will be mentoring you themselves, or if it's going to be a group mentoring, and you can figure out which style is best for you. You should also ask if you'll be giving your own project or if you'll be working on somebody else's project, like working with a grad student on their project, as well as understanding the responsibilities. So some projects might be doing literature searches and writing a report at the end, or some might be you would be doing Western blots all day. And really understanding these responsibilities will help you understand if it's the right fit for you. Lastly, you want to ask about the expectations in terms of the number of hours and the kind of times of days that you would be expected. Again, just to understand what you would be getting yourself into if you were to take that position and if it's the right fit. Now, if you're doing virtual interviews, which are really common right now, you might want to just be aware of a couple of things that we found that people sometimes get wrong. So try to find a quiet place to take the call. We know it can be difficult at some times, but see if you can rent out a room at the library or somewhere where there won't be a lot of background noise. Be mindful of the background that you use. You want to make it kind of professional, just to, keep up the professionalness of the interview. And it's okay if you have to take it from your bedroom or somewhere else. Just blur your background, which is often common on Teams and Zoom. You can easily do it with one button. Lastly, if you can, try to make eye contact, again, just to help to build that relationship between you and the person that you're interviewing with. I love when I get follow-up emails after an interview. So the next day, just send a short, brief email and say, thank you so much for the interview. I was really interested, and maybe even highlight some of the most interesting things that you heard, because that, again, shows that you were listening, and just let them know that you're open to talking again, or you're looking forward to hearing about the next steps. It just reinforces your interest in the position. And lastly, of course, we want you to be yourself and share your excitement about the research. This is a two-way process to figure out if it's a good fit for them and for you. So just try to be yourself and really let them see who you are and what you're excited about. And you can both see if that makes sense to start a position together. Now, we also found a bunch of other questions that came up a lot in registration, as well as we want to share just a couple more advice and resources before we move to questions. So the first one we heard a lot of people ask is, what do you do if you reach out to a scientist and they can only offer you a volunteer position? Now, this is a really tricky question and something that might come up a bunch, but we want you to know that if this happens to you, this is a very personal choice that you have to make for yourself based off of a lot of different factors. So depending on whether you can afford to work without being paid for the summer, or whether you'd rather make money in a different position, or what you would really like to do. So there's no harm in whatever decision you make, but we'll give you a couple of options. Some of your options include applying for awards or other funding opportunities with their support. And we'll go through on the next slide some of those opportunities you may have. You'll also have an option of maybe doing a research project for academic credit. And so you can explore at your school what kind of research projects are available. And you can either try to do one of those during the summer, or also see if you can defer the position and do a thesis with them in September. So that could be an option as well. And of course, it's okay to turn down the position and continue to look for paid positions. We want everybody to get a paid position for the summer. And so it's okay to keep looking if that's what you're looking for. Now, we also built a database of different funding opportunities that we could find, and we linked it to it here. We'll send it out with the slides at the end. Many of the structured summer programs have associated awards, so definitely check out those if you're going to be joining a program or department at UT. You can also explore awards offered by professional societies. So for example, when I was in grad school, there was a Canadian Society for Microbiologists, and they had lots of awards for undergrads. So definitely check out those societies that are related to the research field that you're interested in. Our program, the UHN STAR program, is also launching awards, and more details will be coming out soon. So definitely check our website for those updates. And of course, we're sharing our database of everything that we could find. Lastly, we asked UHN scientists and trainees to tell us what they thought that you should know and what advice that they want to share with you about how to find summer research positions. So we have a bunch of advice. For time, we won't go through all of them right now. We will send them out later and you can look over them, but a lot of the tips involve just being yourself, being careful about the materials you're submitting, how to email people, and really there's one on the next slide that I love that shows that cold emailing actually does work. You don't need to have connections. These things really can work. So just take a chance, go with the process and see what happens. A couple of other resources we want to identify before we go into the questions. First, UHN and the Office of Research Trainees recently launched a podcast. It's called the Seats of Science podcast. And every episode is a different interview with graduate students and postdoctoral researchers at UHN. And they share lots of tips for how to get involved in research and tips for succeeding in research. So we definitely suggest that you check it out. It's a really fun podcast. There are also a couple other resources at U of T that are useful. There's an event on January 20th on the discussion of best practices in applying to summer research jobs in grad school. That could be of use, so definitely check that out. They also have an article on their website about how to find undergrad research opportunities in life sciences, so you can check that out as well. There's a great article by Dr. Samantha Yamin on how to get a research position as a U of T undergrad. It's a couple of years old, but it has lots of really great tips. There's another research guide from Your Next Career Network, so you can definitely check that out as well. There's lots of resources online if you want to hear different people's perspectives of how they got their first research positions and tips that they have. You can also, again, reach out to any grad student or postdoctoral researcher and see if they have any advice for you. So with that, we'd love to say thank you so much for coming. We will jump right into questions, but I just want to first say if you have to take off, that's totally understandable. We hope that you learned a lot in this session. We'll be sending out the slides and the recording later on. We'd really appreciate if you could take a short feedback survey to let us know what you liked and what you didn't like about this session and what we should cover for next time. So Lauren just put that in the chat. And next we will move to questions. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the questions from Slido. Okay, so the first question, how can students with less than stellar GPAs due to other circumstances and no prior research experience gain a spot in a research program and get a supervisor? So I know that you covered some of that, Lauren. Is there anything else you wanted to share?
I think like it's about expressing your interest and your passion, and I think that if you can convey that, then that will get your foot in the door in a way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes just being honest about why your GPA wasn't as strong can be a great approach. People understand, especially with COVID, that things have been tough and that your personal circumstances make you who you are. So people are very understanding of a lot of those things. You can also apply without adding your transcript. If you don't think your transcript is going to help you, you don't have to include it. So the next question is, if you want to go into summer research to try it out, how do you present that in a cover letter while competing with people who already know it's their thing? That's a great question. I would say just be honest about it. It's okay. And every person at some point has to try out research for the first time and figure it out if it's right for them. I think it would just be good to really explain why you're interested in it and why you want to try it out, and not just say, oh, because I'm not sure if I want to go into grad school or not, so I want to try research. Explain why you want to try their specific research and why you think that would be beneficial, and why you're excited about their specific research. Your intentions don't necessarily always matter. It's more of why you're interested and what you think you can bring to the position. Great. So there's a question about how about recent graduates from graduate studies looking to gain more experience and employment? Are there research positions available for this group? That's a great question. There are always opportunities for jobs for recent graduates from graduate studies, the titles just might be different. So you wouldn't be looking for summer research positions like this. You'd be looking for more staff positions. And there are specific titles you can look for. So there's research technician positions. A lot of the analyst or technician positions are entry-level positions that you can come to straight out of bachelor's degrees or out of graduate degrees. If you have a PhD, the positions then are research associates or scientific associates. So there definitely are options. If you'd like to learn more about the different titles and which population or which titles might be relevant for you, you can just start looking at the jobs on the UHN career pages, seeing the requirements, and you'll get a pattern of what the kinds of jobs you'd be eligible for. Or you can also reach out to our office and we're happy to provide some guidance. So I would definitely say summer research positions aren't probably what you're looking for there, but there are a lot of career options that would be available and lots of research options. Great. Lauren, are there any questions from the chat that we should address?
I think we had some questions about like emails, right? Like some questions about how long should the email be? Should I attach my resume and transcript and you know, can the statement of interest be in the body of the email? And I think the answer to that is yes, but if you wanted to also attach, you know, like a short statement of interest with your resume, that would probably be okay too. So I think both of those would be fine. You just want to keep your sort of statement of interest, I think, short and sweet and to the point so that you can catch the attention and convey the key points. But I think you can also reach out without, like we said, without a transcript attached, without a resume, if you would prefer. And sometimes scientists will come back to you and then they'll ask for those things if they want those things.
It's a huge thing that we didn't mention, but every scientist, they're running their own lab and it's kind of like their own business. They get to pick exactly what they're looking for. They might have different preferences in how you should email them or what you should include. And so it's hard for us to give blanket statements that will work every single time. So definitely just recognize you can try different things, see what works, make it all an experiment, and learn what works for you. But every PI is going to be looking for something different. And like Lauren said, they'll ask you if they want more information that you didn't provide. Another question from the Slido is, what are common mistakes you notice that most undergrads do in applications? I have interviewed and looked over so many applications over my life. I helped out a lot in our lab looking for work study students and summer positions. I'd say the most common mistakes are sending out tons of applications that are all the same and not personalized. You can apply to 1,000 places, but if your application materials are not good for each one, you have a very low chance of getting it. So you really want to find out, make sure you put the name of the PI. That seems so simple, but lots of people don't do it. And I know Jenny mentioned that, but it's wild how many people don't do that. Make sure you include the research area they work in, what you're interested in about it. Those things are so simple, but they make such a difference. I would say another thing that people do a lot is in the interviews, they don't really try to convey what they're interested in, or they're not really prepared ahead of time. And that is just a really big no-no. They're taking the time to meet with you, even if it's just for a coffee chat or just a discussion. We want to know that you put in the effort and really try to learn about it. So definitely do your work. Make sure you have good application materials before you start reaching out. Make sure you don't have spelling mistakes and things like that. And I think that if you have polished materials, you'll be in a great spot. I don't know, Lauren, if you had anything else.
I just think one other thing is related to like the interview is like go into the interview with questions in mind. Like we suggested some questions. It's good to have like a list of questions that you've thought about that you want the answers to show that you're engaged and to also get the information that you need so that you can make an informed decision. So I think that also is part of the preparation process. And it just shows that you're truly interested and that you've invested some thought and into it. Yeah. And I think it's, there's another question that comes up, you know, is it worth trying for positions if you don't have lab experience or you're uncertain about pursuing research? And I think it's come up a couple of times, but just, I think if you're interested in an opportunity, you know, and you've thought about it and you've done some research, right, about the research, and you want to pursue it, like, give it a try, right? You never know until you try it. And just because you don't necessarily have research experience, you, like, everyone has to start somewhere. So if you want to start, go for it.
Absolutely. So we have a question from Angelina. As a student who lost a lot of in-person volunteering experience in a research setting because of COVID, how can we get useful experience to be a good candidate? That is also a great question. One of my favorite programs at U of T is the work study program. And I believe they have them at other universities as well, but it's a program where you could get paid to do lab work and the type of things that usually are volunteer things like washing dishes and things like that. You can get paid to do those during the year for a couple of hours a week, up to 10 hours a week. So those programs are really good for getting started because often it'll be your first entry point in the lab that you can then refer to later. But I also think me and Lauren mentioned a bunch of times, you don't need to have research experience to get started. You could, in your materials, you can talk about the experiences you have from lab courses that you took or experiences that you have from your extracurricular activities. You know, leadership skills are also important, or if you have taken part in journal clubs or other things that really get to use your problem solving skills and really think about science. Those are all things that you can mention. And some PIs will be looking for people with lots of experience, but a lot of PIs are open to people with very little experience because they were there in those shoes too. Everybody needs to start somewhere. So there are definitely opportunities for people without experience. Another thing to mention is maybe if you have less experience, that's when you need to use your network more or build your network a little bit more. So that's when you can use personal connections or build personal connections with professors or grad students and postdoctoral researchers and really see if that can help you to find a position instead by showing your commitment and your intelligence in a different way. We have another question. I don't have very much knowledge in biology, but I have experience in the research connected with machine learning. Are there any opportunities for someone like me? That is a fantastic question. There is lots of amazing machine learning research happening at UHN where you can apply your research experience from machine learning to healthcare related problems. And so I would definitely suggest checking out the website for UHN researchers and searching for words related to artificial intelligence and machine learning, and you'll be able to find related labs to apply to. So there's lots that would be relevant there. Another question, are we eligible to apply if we are recent graduates? That is, we graduate in April 2023, and the answer is yes. There are some slightly different titles and processes for people who are new grads, but it is definitely possible. You can also look for positions that are longer term if you're looking for that as well, but you can have summer research positions if you just graduated. They just have different titles and different terms. But your PI will help you with all of that. If they agree to take you, they'll guide you through the process through people and culture. The ORT website, you may not have found the opportunity for undergrads. It is on a different page. We will send that out with all of the materials from today. So we will share that. Have students in the past transitioned from a summer research position to a thesis position in the same research lab? And yes, absolutely. Lots of people do summer research positions and then do the thesis in the same lab. Lots of students come back for other research positions or work in the same lab the next summer. That's all definitely possible. So if you build a great If you build a great connection and you like the research, you definitely have opportunities, depending on the situation in the lab, to stay for longer. Can we start earlier in the lab if we're too excited? Of course you can. Those details you can all work out with your supervisor, but it's definitely possible, obviously within the limitations of your schooling and what the lab can provide, but that's obviously definitely possible. There are also cases where students can join the lab meetings and journal clubs and things like that ahead of time.
There are a couple other questions about sort of part-time or like out of conventional hours and like those types of opportunities. And I think there probably are some opportunities for things like that. And you'd probably want to chat with, like get to a point where you can talk with the supervisor about that. And maybe some more flexibility with certain positions or certain types of research that could be done virtually, perhaps. But I think there's space perhaps to consider those things as well.
I received a private message question asking about if you have experience in one field, but you want to start research in a different field, is that okay? And of course it is. We strongly encourage people to try research in different fields. I changed research fields quite a bit, to be honest, and tried different things out before picking what I wanted to do. It's just about writing in your application materials, giving an understanding of how the experience you have can be applied to a new field and how you would use it as a strength. So it's definitely possible, and I would highly recommend it. Great question. We had lots of people ask about co-op students and if they could be hired for research positions. I was a co-op student too when I was an undergrad, and I did summer research programs as my co-op positions. That is totally fine. You can definitely do that. If you're looking for an 8-month term instead of a 4-month term, just mention that in your emails or your interviews, and you can see if the lab is open to that kind of thing. Or you can also complete your 4-month term and everything goes well, then it's possible to ask the PI for an extension. But all of the positions for the summer can be turned into co-op positions. That's totally fine. It's the same kind of work you would be doing. Okay, so lots of questions. So we'll go through a couple more. If you have to leave, please feel free to do so. Please fill out the feedback form that we sent, and we'll also send out a follow-up email later. Okay, so is it possible to do summer research part-time or out of conventional hours? How would you find out about such positions? Yes, there is opportunities to do part-time positions, but that would be, you would have to ask with PIs one-on-one to ask if they'd be open to that, especially for projects where they're doing literature reviews or things like that. It might be able to work off hours in your own time. If you're doing lab work, usually they want you to be in the lab when other members of the lab are there so that you can be supervised. But part-time is definitely an option. It just depends on what the lab is looking for and if they can accommodate that. But from a strictly like hiring point of view, it's possible. Should I mention in my email that I would like a paid research position, or should I refrain from talking about payment or salary in the first conversation? That's a great question. I would say it never hurts to be upfront. I think it's lots of people get paid research positions. The vast majority of the research positions are paid. I think it's totally fair to ask for that. I don't know, Lauren, if you.
Yeah, I think it's fine to ask that. I mean, I think it's okay to ask to state explicitly what you're looking for. I know some people have, I got a message too that said, you know, what if I'm looking for a volunteer position? So if you're looking for that, you could state that as well. So I think I agree.
Yeah. Are there opportunities for students interested in public health? Yes, there definitely are. Just use search terms to find PIs working in those spaces, but there are definitely research projects and PIs working in the public health space. We had lots of public health students last year. Another question, is it realistic to apply to positions when you're directly from high school? There is, you can always apply. It's just about finding somebody who would be open to taking you. There's lots of people that might be. So if it's something that you're interested in, go for it. Know that you might have a little bit more of a barrier to cross, and you might need to explain your interest in what you're looking for and really sell yourself a lot more. But people straight from high school are welcome to work at UHN. We have a question, is it possible to start and complete a project in a single summer, or is it more likely to help other grad students or PIs with their projects? That definitely depends on the research area and the lab. Often students are put on a project to help grad students or PI postdocs with their projects. But I've also seen students who have had their own projects and have started and completed. In a summer, they've just been given a smaller project to start with, and they've been able to complete that. So it is possible, it just depends on the field. Somebody is asking when the formal deadlines for the applications are, which is a great question. There is no formal deadline for applying to summer research positions at UHN, but each program that we link to will have their own deadline. So definitely keep track of those. The first deadlines we've seen are like January 20th. So if you're interested in those programs, you'll want to get on those early. But in general, there is no specific deadline, but as we've mentioned many times, the earlier the better. Lauren, do you want to pop in?
Yeah, I'm just looking through some of the other questions. Just a reminder that we will share the recording and the slides after the session. So that will be available to you. And there are lots of opportunities for students who are non-medical students. That's one question that came up too. There's opportunities for students, undergraduate students, graduate students, medical students. So keep an eye out. Yeah, opportunities for all. There's one question too, can a summer research position transition into something for a longer term during the school year? And we've kind of hinted at that a little bit in different contexts, but I think they can, right? So there could be different opportunities depending on the lab, and if you start with a summer position, they might, you might have the opportunity to come back the following summer, or perhaps to do some kind of placement through the school year, or maybe it could roll into a co-op placement or things like that. So depending on the lab and opportunities, and that is something that can happen too.
Amazing. So I think that we've covered a lot of questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, but some of them seem kind of to be asking similar things. So we'll maybe leave it at there. Thank you all for joining. It's been a pleasure to chat with you and to share our tips. If you have interest in being more involved in the future, definitely keep connected on our website. You can email us at any point in time. You can call us. You can connect with us on Twitter and LinkedIn. You're always welcome to all of our programming. We run workshops all year long on different research topics and different skill building opportunities. So feel free to connect there and join and learn different things. And we'd love if you could provide feedback on this session. So please fill out the survey. We'll also be sending it out again with all of the resources and tips and the recording. So thank you.
Thanks very much, everybody. Good luck.